You wake up every single day questioning your own sanity. Every conversation with that person leaves you confused, insecure, doubting your own memories. You swear you said something, and she denies it completely. You're certain an event happened one way, and she insists it happened another. And eventually, you start to believe her. You start to distrust yourself. Welcome to Gaslighting, one of the most insidious and destructive forms of psychological abuse that can transform a completely healthy person into someone paralyzed by doubt and anxiety. The term gaslighting comes from a 1944 play called Gaslight, where a manipulative husband gradually convinces his wife that she's going insane. He deliberately dims the gas lights in their home, but when she questions it, he denies that anything changed. He makes her question her own perception of reality. And today, more than 80 years later, this is one of the most common patterns of abuse in relationships, families, workplaces, and even on social media. But here's the problem. Most people don't recognize when they're being victimized by it. You might be manipulated right now and not even know it. It could be your partner, your boss, your father, your mother, your best friend, or even that family member everyone thinks is so charming. The person doing the gaslighting is often extremely charismatic, intelligent, and convincing. They have an almost supernatural ability to rewrite stories, to twist words, to make you feel guilty for things you never did. And the worst part? They usually don't even believe they're doing anything wrong. In their distorted mind, they're just helping you see the truth. When you're being consistently your brain literally changes. Neuroimaging studies show that chronic stress caused by psychological manipulation increases activity in brain areas associated with fear and reduces activity in areas responsible for memory and logical reasoning. You become trapped in a state of constant hypervigilance, always questioning what you know, always expecting to be contradicted, always prepared to defend your own perceptions. It's exhausting. It's dehumanizing. And it's precisely what the gaslighter wants. But here's the truth that needs to be stated loudly. Your reality is not wrong. Your memories are not fabricated. Your feelings are not unjustified. If you feel something is wrong, if you feel you're being manipulated, there's a strong chance you're absolutely right. The problem is that gaslighting is a master of disguise. It hides behind charming smiles and words that sound reasonable. It camouflages itself as just being concerned, or I am only trying to help. Or you've always been a bit dramatic, haven't you? The psychological effects are devastating. Victims of chronic gaslighting develop severe anxiety, deep depression, panic disorder, persistent insomnia, and a completely fragmented sense of identity. Some develop symptoms so similar to post-traumatic stress disorder that psychologists have begun classifying severe gaslighting as a form of trauma. People who are confident, decisive, and self-assured find themselves asking permission for simple decisions. People who had ambitious dreams abandon everything because they've been convinced they were never good enough. People who had healthy relationships lose all ability to trust others. And here's what makes gaslighting so particularly dangerous compared to other forms of abuse. It is almost invisible. Physical abuse leaves bruises. Verbal abuse leaves obvious wounds. But gaslighting destroys you from the inside out in ways that are impossible to prove to anyone else. When you try to explain to a friend or family member what's happening, the gaslighter has already poisoned the well. They've already told everyone that you're too sensitive or crazy or always playing the victim. So when you reach out for help, people look at you with skepticism. Even worse, you start to believe their narrative about you. You internalize their lies until you go and distinguish between what is real and what has been implanted in your mind. This is where the true horror of gaslighting reveals itself. It's not just about being lied to. It's about being manipulated into lying to yourself. It's about having your reality systematically dismantled until you no longer trust your own mind. It's about becoming a prisoner in your own consciousness, forever doubting whether you're experiencing reality correctly. And the gaslighter, they continue on, often completely unaware or perfectly aware of the damage they've caused. They've rewritten history so many times that they themselves may have lost track of what actually happened. Or perhaps they never cared to know. The cruel irony is that the more you try to defend yourself, the more you try to prove your version of reality, the more the gaslighter has leverage. They'll accuse you of being defensive, of making excuses, of never taking responsibility. They'll tell you that your need to be right is the real problem. They'll convince everyone around you that you're the difficult one. And you'll eventually stop fighting. You'll stop trying to defend yourself because the effort feels futile. You'll surrender your reality to preserve your relationship, your job, your reputation, or simply your peace of mind. But there's no peace in surrender. There's only erosion. There's only a slow, painful death of your former self. Research shows that victims of prolonged gaslighting experience changes in their brain structure similar to those seen in combat veterans with PTSD. The hippocampus, the region crucial for memory formation, shrinks. Your ability to create new memories and access old ones deteriorate. You start forgetting conversations, events, and important details. Then the gaslighter tells you that you're always forgetting things and uses this as evidence that you're unreliable, unstable, possibly even developing dementia. It becomes a vicious cycle where the abuse itself creates the symptoms the abuser uses to justify the abuse. This is psychological warfare. But here's something absolutely critical you need to understand right now, in this very moment. Recognizing gaslighting is the first step to breaking free from it. Once you see the patterns, once you understand the specific tactics being used against you, it loses much of its destructive power. You begin to reclaim your reality. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to heal from the wounds that have been inflicted upon your psyche. And that's exactly what we're going to explore together in this comprehensive journey through the deep psychology of how it works mechanically, who does it most often, why they compulsively do it, and most importantly, how you can protect yourself and reclaim your sanity moving forward. Because your reality matters profoundly. Your perception matters more than you know. Your voice matters and deserves to be heard. Your experience is valid and real and deserves acknowledgement. And you absolutely deserve to have your truth acknowledged, believed, and respected by those around you without question or hesitation. You deserve freedom from the chains of doubt that have held you captive for so long. Your transformation and healing journey begins now. What you're about to discover will change how you see yourself and your relationships. These are real, documented patterns that thousands have recognized and used to break free from psychological manipulation. Your mind is resilient. Your capacity to heal is greater than your wounds. Your right to live free from abuse is absolute, and this journey you're embarking on right now will set you free. And this journey you're embarking on right now will set you free. And this journey you're embarking on right now will set you free. And this journey you're embarking on right now will set you free. And this journey you're embarking. Now that you understand what gaslighting is and how it fundamentally works, we need to explore the specific patterns and tactics that gaslighters use. These are not random behaviors. They follow a predictable psychological script, a carefully orchestrated dance of manipulation designed to keep you off balance and questioning yourself. Understanding these patterns is crucial because once you can identify them, you can start protecting yourself. You begin to see the manipulation for what it truly is, not truth, not love, not concern, but calculated control designed to serve the gaslighter's needs. The first and most fundamental pattern is what psychologists call denying reality. This is the gaslighter's bread and butter, their primary weapon of choice. When you confront them with facts, with evidence, with your own clear memories, they simply deny that reality exists. They'll say things like that never happen. You're making that up. I would never say something like that, or you're completely misremembering. The terrifying part is how confidently they state these denials. There's no wavering, no hesitation, no moment of doubt in their voice. They speak with absolute certainty about events you remember clearly. This unwavering confidence is what makes you second-guess yourself. If they're so sure, maybe you're the one who's confused. Maybe your memory is faulty. Closely related to denial is what's called rewriting history. Gaslighters are master storytellers. When it comes to reconstructing the past to serve their narrative, they'll take something that definitely happened and give it a completely different narrative, a twisted version designed to make them look better. They'll insert themselves into events where they weren't present, or remove themselves from situations where they caused direct harm. They'll change the emotional context of conversations entirely. They'll tell you that a conversation where they screamed at you, where they said hurtful things, was actually a calm, rational discussion where you were the one being unreasonable and aggressive. They'll reframe abuse as concern. They'll redefine cruelty as honesty. And they'll do this so convincingly that over time, you start accepting their version of history as the correct one. Another critical pattern is what I call selective truth. This is where the gaslighter tells you technically true information, but presents it in a completely misleading context that distorts your understanding. For example, if you said, "I'm going to the store," and they tell everyone, "She never keeps her word, she was supposed to be somewhere else yesterday." They re-not, "Line, you did say you were going to the store, but..." They reframing it in a way that distorts reality. They might say, "You always interrupt me, and technically you interrupted them once last week." But they frame this single incident as a pattern of chronic behavior. This selective presentation of facts is insidious because you can't point to an outright lie. They can say, "I'm just telling the truth," while completely distorting what that truth means. The fourth pattern is trivializing and minimizing. When you bring up something that hurt you or caused you harm, the gaslighter will downplay it, making it seem insignificant. They'll tell you you're being too sensitive. "It wasn't a big deal. I was just joking. You're overreacting. Or other people have it so much worse." They invalidate your emotional response to their behavior completely. If you're hurt, it's because you're too fragile. If you're angry, it's because you're unreasonable. If you're upset, it's because you can't handle reality. They make you feel like your emotional reactions are the problem, not the behavior that caused those reactions in the first place. Then there's deflection and counterattack, where instead of addressing what you've said, the gaslighter turns it around and attacks you. You confront them about something they did, and suddenly you're the one being criticized for your response. You say, "You hurt my feelings when you said that," and they respond with, "Well, you always make me feel bad with your accusations." You're trying to resolve an issue, and they've somehow made you the perpetrator and themselves the victim. This is why conversations with gaslighters never get resolved, because they never stay on the actual issue. They constantly redirect the conversation toward your faults instead. Another powerful tactic is intermittent reinforcement. This is drawn from behavioral psychology and is one of the most addictive patterns known to psychology. The gaslighter will occasionally be kind, loving, and attentive. They'll give you moments of warmth and affection that feel incredible. But these moments are intermittent and unpredictable. You never know when the next kind moment will come. This unpredictability creates a powerful psychological hook that keeps you attached. Your brain becomes addicted to those moments of warmth because they're rare and unexpected. This is the same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. The variable reward schedule is more powerful than consistent rewards. You stay in the relationship hoping for the good version of them to show up, even though you know the cycle will repeat. Then there's gaslighting through allies. The gaslighter doesn't just manipulate you. Directly, they recruit other people to validate their distorted version of reality. They'll tell your family members that you're unstable, that you're too sensitive, that you're the problem in the relationship. They'll be charming and wonderful to your friends, so that when you try to tell them what is happening, your friends don't believe you. They've already positioned themselves as the reasonable one and you as the unreasonable one. So when you reach out for support, people either don't believe you or they tell you to work it out because they've been convinced that you're being difficult and unreasonable. Gaslighters also use emotional hostage-taking. They threaten to leave, to harm themselves, to take the children, to tell people about your insecurities, or to create some other catastrophe unless you comply with their demands or accept their version of reality. They create a situation where your compliance feels like the only way to avoid disaster. You find yourself agreeing with their version of events, apologizing for things you didn't do, and taking responsibility for their behavior, all to prevent some threatened consequence. You're literally being held hostage by the threat of abandonment or destruction of your reputation. Finally, there's love as a weapon. They'll say, if you really loved me, you wouldn't question me, or I do all this for you, so the least you could do is trust me. They weaponize love and loyalty completely. They make you feel like if you don't accept their version of reality, if you don't trust them completely, then you don't actually love them. This creates a false choice between loving them and protecting your own sanity and well-being. This is perhaps the cruelest tactic because it exploits our deepest human need, the need to love and be loved, and uses it as a tool to keep us trapped in cycles of doubt, confusion, and emotional trauma that feel inescapable. These patterns rarely appear in isolation. They work together in a complex, interconnected system designed to keep you confused, off balance, and dependent on the gaslighter for validation of reality itself. The more aware you become of these specific tactics and patterns, the more you can start to see them for what they truly are. Not expressions of truth, not expressions of love, but calculated manipulation. This awareness is your first critical tool for breaking free from the psychological chains that bind you. Understanding these 9 core patterns gives you the foundation you need to recognize gaslighting when it occurs in your own life, enabling you to Let's go deeper into the psychological mechanics of gaslighting and understand why it's so devastatingly effective. This isn't just about manipulation. This is psychological warfare designed to destroy your sense of self. When someone systematically attacks your perception of reality, they're not just playing games or being difficult. They're engaging in a form of psychological violence that can leave scars as deep as physical abuse, sometimes deeper because the wounds are invisible. The human brain is fundamentally designed to trust its own perceptions. From birth, we learn to interpret the world through our senses and our memories. We developed what psychologists call an internal locus of evaluation. The ability to trust our own judgment about what is real and what is not. This is essential for survival and for functioning as an independent adult. But when someone systematically tells you that your perceptions are wrong, that your memories are false, that your interpretations are distorted, they're attacking this fundamental cognitive function. They're essentially trying to rewire your brain to depend on them for validation of reality. This is where the concept of cognitive dissonance becomes crucial. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological discomfort you experience when you hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously. For example, you said something specific, but someone you love and trust insists you said something completely different. This creates an unbearable internal tension. Your brain desperately wants to resolve this tension. So what does it do? Sometimes it rejects the external information and trusts itself. But when the person creating the dissonance is someone you love, someone you depend on emotionally, your brain often chooses to reject your own perceptions instead. It is less painful to doubt yourself than to accept that someone you love is deliberately lying to you. Over time, repeated exposure to this cognitive dissonance literally changes your brain. Research using functional MRI scans shows that chronic gaslighting victims develop hyperactivity in the amygdala of the brain sphere center and reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thinking and decision. Your brain is essentially being rewired to operate in a constant state of fear and confusion. You become dependent on the gaslighter to tell you what is real because your own internal reality checking system has been compromised. This leads to a condition that trauma psychologists call learned helplessness. This concept was first identified in dogs during laboratory experiments where they were exposed to inescapable electric shocks. Eventually, the dogs stopped trying to escape even when given the opportunity. Their brains had learned that their actions didn't matter, that they couldn't control their circumstances. The same thing happens to victims of chronic gaslighting. After repeated cycles of being told your reality is wrong, after countless failed attempts to make the gaslighter understand your perspective, after repeatedly being contradicted and invalidated, you eventually stop trying. You develop a passive acceptance of whatever narrative the gaslighter presents, even when you know it's false. But here's where it gets even more insidious. As you become more dependent on the gaslighter for validation of reality, you simultaneously become isolated from other sources of validation. The gaslighter has already poisoned your relationships with friends and family. You're too embarrassed to reach out because you've internalized their narrative that you're unstable or unreliable. So you have fewer and fewer people to check your reality against. The gaslighter becomes your primary source of information about yourself and about the world. This is textbook psychological control. The gaslighter also exploits what researchers call confirmation bias. This is the tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in ways that confirm your pre-existing beliefs. Once the gaslighter has convinced you that you have a faulty memory or unstable perception, you start interpreting all new information through this lens. When you forget something, you think, of course I forgot, I always do. When you misplace your keys, you think this proves I'm scatterbrained. When you have difficulty concentrating, you think this confirms what he said about me being unreliable. The gaslighter has essentially programmed you to provide evidence against yourself. There's also the phenomenon of trauma bonding. This occurs when a person alternates between being cruel and being kind, between inflicting pain and offering comfort. The victim becomes psychologically bonded to the abuser because they read the only one offering relief from the abuse they themselves are causing. It is like being in a storm, and the only shelter is with the person who created the storm. Your brain becomes addicted to the relief, to the moments when the abuse stops. This creates an incredibly powerful psychological attachment that is difficult to break because it is rooted in trauma and neurochemistry, not in rational thought. The gaslighter also manipulates what is called your autobiographical memory, your memory of your own life story. They rewrite not just isolated incidents, but the entire narrative arc of your life. They tell you that you were always anxious, always dramatic, always unreliable. They convince you that your accomplishments were actually failures, that your strengths are actually weaknesses. Over time, you internalize this distorted autobiography. You start to see your own life through their lens. You question your own judgment about career choices, about relationships, about who you are as a person. One of the most damaging aspects of gaslighting is what I call identity erosion as your sense of. Reality becomes increasingly uncertain. Your sense of self becomes equally uncertain. You stop knowing who you are. You lose your preferences, your opinions, your values. You become a reflection of whoever is gaslighting you. You say what they want to hear. Do what they want you to do. Believe what they tell you to believe. The person you were before the gaslighting slowly disappears. And the terrifying part is that this happens gradually, almost one day you wake up and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. This psychological warfare extends into your emotional life as well. Gaslighting victims develop what's known as emotional dysregulation, difficulty managing and responding to emotional experiences. You become either numb, unable to feel anything, or hypersensitive, experiencing intense emotional reactions to minor triggers. You don't trust your own emotional responses anymore because you've been told so many times that your feelings are invalid or exaggerated. So you either suppress them completely or you overreact to everything. Your emotional life becomes chaotic and unpredictable, which further reinforces the gaslighter's narrative that there's something wrong with you. Understanding these psychological mechanisms is critical because it helps you realize that your responses to gaslighting are not signs of weakness or instability. They are normal human responses to abnormal psychological abuse. Your brain is responding exactly as any brain would respond when subjected to systematic reality, distortion, and emotional manipulation. Recognizing this is the first step toward reclaiming your psychological autonomy and rebuilding your sense of self. You are not broken. You are not crazy. You have simply been subjected to psychological warfare that would damage anyone's mental health and sense of reality. Now that you understand how deeply gaslighting affects you, we need to talk about escape and recovery. The good news is that recognizing gaslighting is already a massive step toward freedom. The fact that you're reading this, the fact that you're questioning the narratives you've been told about yourself, means some part of you still knows the truth. That part of you is your lifeline to recovery. Don't ignore it. Listen to it. Trust it. The first step in escaping gaslighting is establishing what I call reality anchors. These are concrete, objective facts about your life that you can refer back to when your reality is being questioned. Write down specific incidents in detail. Document conversations as accurately as you can remember them. Keep a journal where you meticulously record what actually happened, what was said, word forward, if possible, and how you genuinely felt in that moment. This isn't for confrontation with the gaslighter, it's for you. It's your evidence that your perception of reality is valid and accurate. When someone tells you that something never happened, you have your journal to remind you that it absolutely did. When they tell you you're overreacting or being too sensitive, you have documentation of the actual events to prove that your reaction was completely proportional and justified. The second critical step is reality checking with trusted sources. Identify people in your life who you trust, completely people who have consistently shown you unconditional love and support and who don't have a vested interest in manipulating you or controlling your narrative. These might be a trauma-informed therapist, a best friend who knows you well, a family member you can depend on, or a support group specifically for abuse survivors. When you're uncertain about your reality, when the gaslighter has left you confused and spinning about what's actually real, reach out to these people and share what happened. Don't ask them to tell you what to think or how to feel instead. Ask them to help you reality check the situation objectively. Say something like, "This is what happened. This is what was said to me. This is how I'm feeling. Does this seem reasonable to you? Do I seem like I'm overreacting?" Their outside perspective, coming from people who love you and have no agenda, can be incredibly grounding and validating. The third step is limiting contact and establishing firm boundaries. You don't necessarily have to end the relationship immediately, though that may ultimately be necessary for your well-being. But you do need to reduce the amount of time you spend with the gaslighter and deliberately minimize the topics you discuss with them. You need to create psychological distance between yourself and their influence. Don't engage in arguments about reality or what actually happened. When they deny something happened, don't try to convince them otherwise with evidence or logic. Simply say, "I remember it differently," and firmly change the subject or walk away. Don't give them the emotional reaction they're seeking because that's their fuel. This removes their primary source of power and control over you. One of the most important things to understand is that you cannot logic someone out of gas. You cannot present enough evidence, make enough compelling arguments, or appeal to their sense of reason and fairness, because gaslighting fundamentally isn't about logic or truth. It's about control and power. The gaslighter doesn't actually care whether you believe their version of events. What they care about is keeping you confused, uncertain, and dependent on them for validation. So stop trying to convince them. Stop trying to make them see your perspective or understand your hurt. This is a waste of your precious emotional energy and mental resources. Instead, focus all your effort on rebuilding your sense of self. This is where the real, lasting healing happens. As you recover from gaslighting, you need to consciously and deliberately work on rediscovering who you actually are underneath all the damage. What are your authentic preferences? What do you genuinely believe in? What are your core values? What activities and people make you feel truly alive and happy? These questions might sound simple on the surface, but if you've been gaslighted for years, you may genuinely not know the answers anymore. Start incredibly small. What's your favorite color? What kind of food do you actually enjoy eating? What activities make you feel energized and alive? As you answer these small, intimate questions about yourself, you gradually rebuild your sense of agency, autonomy, and identity. Therapy with a trauma-informed therapist is absolutely invaluable during this process. A skilled therapist can help you understand the specific patterns you've been subjected to, help you process and release the emotional pain and shame, and help you actively rebuild your damaged sense of self. Look specifically for therapists who specialize in emotional abuse, complex PTSD, or narcissistic abuse dynamics. They'll understand the specific psychological damage that gaslighting causes and can provide targeted evidence-based interventions to help you heal. You also need to allow yourself to grieve deeply. Grieve the relationship you thought you had. Grieve the person you thought they were. Grieve the years and time you lost. Grieve the version of yourself that was lost or damaged by the abuse. This grief is absolutely necessary and valid. Don't skip over it or try to minimize it. Allow yourself to fully feel angry, sad, disappointed, and profoundly betrayed. These emotions are legitimate and necessary for genuine healing to occur. Finally, understand that recovery from gaslighting is not a straight, linear path. You'll have days where you feel strong and crystal clear about what happened to you. You'll have other difficult days where you doubt yourself again, where you wonder if maybe you were exaggerating or overreacting, where you miss them and question your decision to leave. This is completely normal. The gaslighting has created deep neural pathways in your brain that take considerable time to rewire and heal. Be patient and compassionate with yourself. Celebrate small victories. Notice when you trust your own judgment. Notice when you stand up for yourself. Notice when you remember who you are. One critical thing to remember during recovery: reconnect with your body. Abuse trauma lives in your body. You may experience anxiety, panic attacks, chronic pain, or tension that you can't explain. This is your nervous system responding to the trauma it experienced. Practices like yoga, meditation, breath work, dancing, or simply going for walks in nature can help you reconnect with your body and help your nervous system regulate. Your body holds wisdom that your mind may have forgotten. Listen to it. Also, be extremely cautious about future relationships as you heal. Gaslighting victims often attract new manipulators because the abuse has damaged your ability to recognize red flags. Take time to be alone. Focus on yourself. Develop healthy friendships. Learn to identify manipulation patterns. A good therapist can help you recognize warning signs that you may have missed before. The path to freedom and wholeness is real. It exists, and you are far stronger and more resilient than you currently know. Every single moment you choose to trust yourself, every moment you choose to believe your own perception of reality, every moment you refuse to accept someone else as distorted and harmful version of who you reclaiming your life and your power. The chains of gaslighting may feel impossibly heavy and unbreakable, but they're not. You can absolutely break free. You deserve to live free from psychological manipulation and abuse. You deserve to trust yourself again. Your life is waiting for you on the other side of this pain. That journey begins now with this D. You've made it to the final section of this journey, and that alone is significant. The fact that you've read through all of this, that you've allowed yourself to understand the depths of gaslighting and its effects, shows incredible courage and self. This is the part where we talk about what comes next to your new beginning, your reclaimed life, your authentic self emerging from the ashes of psychological abuse and manipulation. The first thing to understand about your new beginning is that it is not about forgetting what happened or pretending it never occurred. Healing is not about erasing your past or denying the reality of your experiences. It is about consciously and intentionally integrating your experience into your life story in a way that doesn't define you entirely. You are not the person who was gaslighted. You are a complete, multifaceted person who experienced gaslighting and survived it. There's a profound and important difference. One definition is an identity that limits you. The other is an experience that shaped you, but doesn't determine who you are or who you can become. As you move forward into this new chapter, you will begin to notice things about yourself that were hidden deep under the weight of manipulation and control. You'll discover that you have preferences, opinions, and desires that are authentically yours, not implanted by someone else. You'll remember what it felt like to laugh genuinely without wondering if you were laughing at the right thing or if you'd be criticized for it. You'll experience joy without the constant background fear of it being taken away or used against you. You'll make decisions without second-guessing every choice. These small moments of genuine feeling and authentic choice are your real self beginning to emerge and flourish again. Building new relationships after gaslighting requires careful intentionality and heightened awareness. You need to develop the ability to recognize healthy relationship patterns versus the unhealthy ones that traumatized you. Healthy relationships involve genuine mutual respect, where both people's reality is honored and validated. There's no need to constantly defend your perceptions or prove your inherent worth to the other person. In a truly healthy relationship, when there's a disagreement about something, both people can honestly say, "I see things differently," and work together toward mutual understanding, not toward winning arguments or controlling outcomes. Watch carefully for people who dismiss your feelings, who deny things you absolutely know happened, who make you question your own mind and reality. These are critical warning signs that should make you pause and reassess. As you rebuild your life, also deliberately and consciously rebuild your support network. Healthy friendships are reciprocal and balanced. Both people genuinely invest in their relationship. Real friends celebrate your success and achievements without needing to diminish them or make themselves feel bigger. They listen to you without judgment or criticism. They validate your experiences and feelings without requiring you to constantly convince them or present evidence. They don't make you feel small, inferior, or unworthy. Pay close attention to how people make you feel when you're around them. Trust those feelings deeply. Your body as intuition and your emotional responses have become increasingly more accurate and reliable as you've healed. One of the most powerful and transformative aspects of recovery is finding your voice again. Gaslighting deliberately silences you and robs you of your voice. It makes you profoundly afraid to speak your truth because you've been systematically conditioned to believe your truth doesn't matter and doesn't count. But your voice absolutely does matter. Your perspective is valid and important. Your experiences are real and deserving of acknowledgement. Speaking your truth doesn't mean you need to convince anyone or endlessly defend yourself against criticism. It simply means saying what's genuinely true for you and allowing that to be enough. Sometimes people won't understand you. Sometimes they won't believe you. Sometimes they'll reject your reality. That's their limitation and their choice, not a reflection on the validity of your truth. Consider actively engaging in creative activities that help you express yourself, authentically writing, art, music, dance, movement, consistent therapy, or support groups with other survivors. These aren't luxuries or indulgences. They're essential and valuable tools for integration and genuine healing. They help you process the trauma you experienced and help you reconnect with your authentic self. They give voice and expression to the parts of you that were silenced and suppressed. As you continue healing, you may experience something psychologists call post-traumatic growth. This is when people who've endured significant trauma actually develop greater resilience, deeper, genuine compassion for others, stronger and more authentic relationships, and a much clearer sense of personal purpose and meaning. You may find that your experience, as painful and difficult as it was, has given you valuable insights and inner strengths you didn't have before the trauma. You may develop a natural ability to recognize manipulation in other people's situations and help them escape. You may develop a deeper and more authentic appreciation for truth, honesty, and genuine connection. These are not compensations for the pain you experienced, but they are real and meaningful developments that can genuinely emerge from your healing process. Remember that healing from gaslighting is not a straight linear path forward. Setbacks and difficult days don't mean you've failed or gone backward. You might have a conversation that triggers old patterns of self-doubt and confusion. You might encounter someone who reminds you of the gaslighter and feel old fears rise up unexpectedly. This doesn't mean you've regressed or lost progress. It means you're human, and trauma responses and conditioned patterns take considerable time to fully resolve and heal. When this happens, be exceptionally gentle and kind with yourself. Use the tools and strategies you've learned. Reach out to your support system. Journal your thoughts and feelings. Move your body in ways that feel good. Remember that you've already survived the worst. Finally, deeply understand that your life is not defined by what was done to you. Your personal story doesn't end with the abuse, not by a long shot. This is just one chapter of your life, a difficult, painful, traumatic chapter perhaps, but not your entire narrative or identity. Your story continues forward with your personal courage, your commitment to healing, your growth, and your deliberate choice to build a life of authenticity and truth. You have the power to write what comes next. The journey from being gaslit to reclaiming your reality is one of the bravest and most transformative things you can do. It requires confronting painful truths about people you trusted and about yourself. It requires rebuilding your sense of reality and self from the ground up. It requires showing up for yourself with compassion day after day, even on the hardest days when doubt creeps back in. But you are absolutely capable of this. You have already demonstrated the strength and resilience you need. As you close this chapter and open the next exciting one, remember this fundamental truth. Your reality is valid. Your perceptions matter deeply. Your voice deserves to be heard. Your truth is important and valuable. You are worthy of respect, kindness, and authentic love especially. From yourself, the chains of gaslighting may have held you captive, but they do not own you. You are free. Your new beginning starts now, with this very moment, with this choice to believe in and trust yourself. Welcome home to your authentic self.